It is official that Ranger Suarez will not be returning to the Philadelphia Phillies after agreeing to a massive contract to join the Boston Red Sox. While it felt inevitable that he would not be returning to Philadelphia due to the price point, this now puts some significant pressure on some unique faces to the organization. Doing a breakdown exactly what went down and what this means for the Phillies and why they may regret allowing the guy who I consider the best postseason pitcher in franchise history to walk right out the door. But nonetheless, do want to give Ranger his flowers and start right off with the facts here that the breaking news that we got is the Red Sox have agreed to a 5-year, $130 million deal with starting pitcher Ranger Suarez, a source told ESPN, confirmed by multiple sources. And this article and this tweet here continues to say, Suarez's time in Philly is sadly over. He joined the organization at 16 years old back in 2012. Suarez went 53-37 and had a 3.38 ERA with the Phillies. Thank you, Ranger. And beyond just the raw stats that we can reflect on, this dude just showed up in the postseason and had a personality that I absolutely love. Truly one of my favorite players on this Phillies team across this era, and happy at least that he landed in Boston. That my fear for how this could go down is, once again, it did feel like a foregone conclusion for most of this offseason that he would not be back in Philadelphia. He went down the Scott Boras path. He was ready to get as much money as he possibly could, and shout out to Ranger Suarez for absolutely getting a bag. Generational wealth that will change the Suarez, family forever right there, and I'm happy for him. And I can still picture him mowing down Yankees players in Yankee Stadium, and we'll be rooting for him in the very process. But nonetheless, this does change things from the Phillies' calculus for what the expectations are for their overall pitching staff right now, and do want to dive into exactly what that means. Before I do so, do got to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor.
Before we get into the rest of today's show, this video is brought to you by Kalshi. If you download Kalshi using the link in the description and use code DIGESTMLB, you're going to get $20 when you trade your first 100. Kalshi is the largest prediction market in the United States, and on their platform you can trade yes or no on real-life events such as sports, elections, news, pretty much anything. Now, whether you're in California, Texas, or anywhere across the country, Kalshi is live in all 50 states. For us sports fans, we can turn on game outcomes, playoff chances, or player performances, all on a regulated market in which you can cash out at any time. Looking at that NL East division title odds, we can see Philadelphia right there at the 32% odd on the trade. Yes, I think it's a really good one to make right now. We can also see the odds on their forecasted win total on Kalshi that you can trade on as well. It's genuinely the smarter way to use your sports or news knowledge, and you can close your position whenever you want. Test your ball knowledge today by downloading Kalshi with the link in the description. And again, use code DIGESTMLB to get your $20 bonus. We appreciate everybody at Kalshi for making this video possible.
Now, when speaking about Ranger Suarez directly here, I first want to highlight exactly what we brought to the table this year. He's coming off a season in which he pitched 26 games for this Phillies team in his age 30 year, 157.1 innings pitched, struck out 151, allowed 154 hits. That comes out to 8.8 hits per 9 innings, just 14 home runs allowed, a 3.2 ERA, and a 1.220 whip. But it is not just the raw stats that makes Ranger Suarez. And yes, he has some injury concerns. Yes, you can point to a legitimate argument about the decrease in velocity at this stage of the season. But Ranger has never been a guy that has been relied on power to get his opponents out. That he is very creative, that he sets up his pitches, the movement and what he has. And what I appreciate about him the most is even when he does not have his best stuff, the dude guts it out. But I will not forget the postseason opportunities in which he very clearly did not have it and still find a way to escape moments, walking hitters, forcing strikeouts, forcing groundouts. And I do think he's going to be a great addition for that Red Sox team. Now, when speaking about the overall playoff success, did just want to point to this final stat here that does say the Ranger Suarez has major postseason pedigree. That looking at the lowest career postseason ERAs in MLB history right there, Ranger Suarez is 6th on the list. That is nuts stuff, and I do believe that is going to translate for the Red Sox. But for the Phillies directly here, which is what we are worried about, this does put some pressure on the rest of the pitching staff. And to reflect on what that current outlook is, that there are 4 names that are set in stone right now that we do have to keep that in mind. And what that is Christopher Sanchez, who showed very clearly last season that he is ready to be an ace, that he is ready to be a best pitcher on that staff. And guess what? This may be necessary based on the fact that Zack Wheeler, a bit more of a question mark than we would like to be the case right there. Him obviously having his season end last year due to that blood clot issue. All expectations are he will be returning to full force at some point this season, but it is not a guarantee that is for opening day. And in fact, seems pretty unlikely that that will be the case there. We have not got any sort of noteworthy update from the organization since that ultimately did occur. So we will have our eye on that, but that is a storyline. I'm pretty optimistic about Zack Wheeler in the larger scale of his career, that I do think this guy will be able to pick up where he left off. He was pitching some of the best baseball of his career, even in his advanced age right here. And I think he will be just fine to returning to normal. I mean, he was making a legitimate Cy Young case last year before, obviously, he was shut down for the season. We'll see if he returns to that exact form, but I'm confident that Zack Wheeler is going to be a key piece of this rotation once he is ready to pitch to the fullest extent. But beyond just Christopher Sanchez and Zack Wheeler, a bit more of a question marks here. Now, Jesus Luzardo, I do want to give a shout out to, who obviously is a guy that the organization believes in quite a bit, that Dave Dombrowski going out and trading for him last offseason. I did want to highlight Luzardo, who put this quote on display, that he will not be pitching in the World Baseball Classic this year. And the reason for that being, quote, going into a free agency year, I made the decision that unfortunately I'm not going to be able to pitch in the Classic. I wanted to take my time, take a slow spring training, fully get ready with the team, and make sure my body bounced back after a career high in innings. Now, obviously, I first want to praise that he is, prioritizing the outlook with the Phillies. But the other thing to keep in mind here, which he directly put his cards on the table, is this is a guy that will be setting up for his free agency next offseason. There will have to be some decision to be made from the Phillies' direction. When Luzardo is locked in and on, he looks like an elite pitcher in baseball. But there were multiple stretches this year in which he sort of lost it, where he got straight up rocked around. And I know there were the conversations about his struggles pitching from the stretch. Was he tipping pitches? Things like that. The bottom line is I'm still cool with Luzardo. I felt overall positive about how last year went. And I do think when the moment mattered the most, that he found a way to impact winning to the level that the Phillies did need. But that is a bit of a storyline to watch. That I feel good about Luzardo, not great about Luzardo. That we will see exactly how the season goes. But overall, I think the organization believes in him. I think he showed enough that there is good. It is fair to have confidence in, and we will see how this season goes. Not quite the same outlook for a guy like Aaron Nola, who really struggled last season, and the fear that I think is fair to have is, are all these innings that he has pitched over the years starting to take a toll? That this has been a guy that's been an innings eater, that you can pretty much pencil him in for 200 innings pitched on a year-by-year basis, which cannot be said about very many pitchers across the MLB. Nola has been that guy, and even if it is not the top-tier ace elite stuff that we hoped he would be when he first came up and was called up from the organization here, they need that version of Aaron Nola to eat up that level of innings, to take up those regular season situations, and we'll see how that does ultimately end up. But the bigger story here is who is not on this list, as this is just 4 names, and obviously there has to be a 5th to get through the entirety of the Phillies organization. And the question that is really going to pop on display, and by the way, possibly 2 names depending on if Zack Wheeler is not ready for opening day right there. That brings the question of Andrew Painter, and the other guy that's sort of waiting in the background here is Taijuan Walker. Now, we know who Taijuan Walker is as a pitcher at this point. I do give him credit for the way that he continues to battle, fight, compete, give everything that he does have, but the fact of the matter is he just does not have the caliber of MLB stuff that the Phillies expected and hoped when they did sign him to that deal. Andrew Painter, we do not know the answer to those questions, and I once again will stick up for the kid from the standpoint of, I think it was a mistake by the Phillies organization to put expectations that he would be called up to the major leagues last year, that they did say they were targeting a July-ish call-up, and that obviously never came to fruition right here. But now, this is where we find out who Andrew Painter exactly is as a pitcher. He's been through the Tommy John situation. He did not look like the best version of himself last year, and this is a really crucial offseason that he's currently in the midst of. If he can return to the guy that they believed in, that they selected with the expectation he'll be a front-end type of rotation guy, the Phillies will be in a significantly much better spot as an organization. If that does not materialize, there are going to have to be some difficult discussions for what is the path forward from here. And I do think it is time to start having a conversation of the pitching staff is a bit more of a question mark than it feels like people are openly addressing. That I wholeheartedly believe in Christopher Sanchez. I feel good about Zack Wheeler returning to the form that he was in last season. I'm confident that Jesus Luzardo can be good enough, and I think Aaron Nola can be what they're hoping for, at least closer to the best version of himself. But that 5th starting pitcher spot is a major question mark. I would feel significantly better if Ranger Suarez was that guy, but I also understand not wanting to spend that level of money for a player that you have other options at that specific position right here. So for the Phillies directly, what their actions from here are is going to depend, or is going to show their hand a bit on what their level of confidence is in Andrew Painter. if we start to hear some rumors, reports, or maybe even some breaking news that they brought in another pitcher, I think that tells us all we need to know, that Andrew Painter is not going to be ready. Now, we can look at that as an insurance policy for a guy like Zack Wheeler. Maybe they target one of these, a guy that can pitch out of the bullpen when, the pitching staff returns to full health. But we will see what happens from there. The bottom line, the takeaway today is that Ranger Suarez will no longer be with the Philadelphia Phillies, and he leaves some bigger shoes to fill that I think people are ready to openly acknowledge. So to Ranger Suarez directly, one of my favorite Phillies ever, absolutely deserves a standing ovation every single time he returns to Citizens Bank Park. I do hope he goes out and balls out with the Boston Red Sox. I want to see him striking out Aaron Judge, laughing his way to the bullpen in the same way that he did in the Phillies uniform right there, and I have a feeling he's going to be a fan favorite in Boston in the same way that he was here. So shout out to Ranger Suarez for getting the bag. Shout out to you guys for tuning in this video here. If you have not already, make sure you smash the subscribe button to the channel. Drop a like on this video, give me your thoughts in the comments, and I'll be back talking with you next time right here on Phillies Digest. Peace.